All right, folks. This is take 2. Insecure, season 3, episode 1. Now, the big hype around season 3 is about toxic masculinity. And we're supposed to see a new version of Issa Rae and Molly in this particular iteration, minus Lawrence. And before I get into the character sketches, let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. Moving on without Lawrence in Issa's life is supposed to be a natural progression. And hopefully it'll be more authentic and give the show a different direction and hopefully make it better as far as telling an authentic story. And fans were hoping to see the same level of realness and quality without Lawrence being in the picture. And right away, without Lawrence being there, you can tell there's something missing. You can tell that the male energy that Lawrence brought to the show, to the series, is missing. Even from the very beginning of the show, the very first episode of episode 1, you can tell the tension, the real tension between Lawrence and Issa that drove the show is missing. Even Molly's relationship, there was a male balance that Lawrence gave even to Molly's relationship, because Molly's relationships with men was juxtaposed to Issa's relationship with Lawrence, which is a stabilizing force. So instead of having one friend or one protagonist that had a stabilizing force, even as she fought against it, and Molly striving to have what Issa had and she didn't appreciate, now we have two women that are unstable. So we would have thought that without Lawrence, Issa would fess up to how she really feels and what she really wanted now that Lawrence had moved on. In other words, there should be no tension between her and Daniel. She should accept the fact that, okay, me and Daniel have something, and move on and explore that. But alas, we haven't seen it. I understand that this is a female-dominated show, and it's about the two best friends and what they go through. And even with sometimes the over-the-top jokes and the over-the-top scenarios that they put on, it was always grounded in something real, because Lawrence was there and Lawrence felt like a real relationship. Lawrence gave us a peek into what everybody's daily lives go through, because there's always that tension. And without him, without that male anchor, whether you liked him or not, whether you like their relationship or not, it was a male anchor. It did give some realness to the show. Now, maybe later on, as we go through the series, we'll actually see things get more real and less of a farce, because this first episode did not. This episode was supposed to show black male dysfunction and black toxic masculinity, but it actually only showed how, without being moored by a male or some kind of male stability, females are actually way more dysfunctional and way more confused than without it. So right off the bat, I wondered what the show was going to be like without Lawrence. And so far, I'm kind of disappointed. They always say you never kill off characters that are popular, because lightning in a bottle is hard to capture. And Insecure, with the relationship between Lawrence and Issa, captured lightning in a bottle. And when you took off the lid, that lightning left. So now you have to recreate it. Now let's get into the character sketches. Let's get into the scenarios in the character sketches. Right off the bat, we get into a weird situation. Now, Issa, selfish as ever, instead of moving in with her brother or one of her friends, or even her family, till she gets on her feet, she moves in with her ex, with whom she has a romantic and sexual relationship with, that she is constantly rejecting. And strangely, he lets her move in because he really essentially does care for her. And he accepts that there will be no sex. All well and good. But in the opening scenes, we see Daniel, her ex, banging out a chick. And we assumed by the opening scene, because we can't see her face, that that woman is Issa, crying and moaning and screaming in ecstasy. We cut to the living room. We find Issa covering her ears because Daniel is having his tryst. We can see the irritation in her face when she gets up and she grabs her keys and heads out the door, because naturally, everybody can understand it. If you have a connection with somebody, especially a romantic connection with somebody, even if you know they moved on and they see other people, the last thing you want to do is hear it. So Daniel accepting that she's going to sleep on the couch and accepting that she doesn't have a place to stay. Evidently, they didn't work out how his other interest, girlfriend or however it goes, is going to come through and see Daniel. And Daniel, being a alpha male, as they ought do, he's going to do his thing, because she probably told him, I'm not going to be in the way, just do what you normally do. So he does what he normally does. And he treats her like a buddy, treats her like a friend, which, like most women, even if they're your friends, really don't want to be treated like your buddy and really don't want to be treated like your friend. So you can see the irritation in Issa's face when she actually picks up her keys and she goes out and she drives Uber just to stay out of the house and stay away. And the next day when she comes back, she confronts Daniel about his escapade and how she doesn't want to hear him banging out his girls. So she asks for a heads up, and he can see that she's noticeably irritated. So there was a scene where Daniel is, actually there was a couple of scenes. When Daniel goes over, I think it was his sister's house, to get a guitar. And his sister wants Daniel to babysit I think that's his niece. I'm not sure what the relationship is. And women being nosy and messy, she asked about Issa sleeping on the couch and can't remember the other girl's name. He mentions the other girl's name, how they feel about it and how they work that stuff out. And he says that it's cool because she's just a friend and things will be okay. They'll work it out. And naturally, his sister laughs because she knows that's bullshit. So Daniel goes back to the house. Daniel is adding guitar tracks to his music, and he's playing his music, and Issa comes walking in. And they're grooving because they've been close. They actually mesh together. And anytime you've been in a romantic relationship with another, there's certain times where you're going to fall into the relationship whether you like it or not. And so they're having a drink and they're listening to his track and they're having a good time. And you know how women give you that look, and you look at her back and you can see that there's something going on. So he makes a move to see what's up, and she pulls back. So he confronts her. What are we doing here? Why are you here? If this is not what you want, why are you confusing me by making these moves and having these gestures like you care, like you're jealous, but yet now when I make a move on you, now you don't want to succumb. You don't want to move forward. You don't want to give a direction, which is typical Issa, which is confusion, not created by Daniel, because it's Daniel's doing what he does. Daniel's living his life, and you bring your confusion about a relationship that you fostered and you managed and you entered into multiple times. Now it's complicated. It gets more complicated when he gives her a heads up that he's got his girl over, and she doesn't want to hear it. She needs to be elsewhere. So she stays out with Molly until Daniel does what he does, and she comes in. And then when she comes in the next morning, she confronts him again about it's okay that he gives her a heads up, but he never gave her the all clear. And women do that. Women can't help it. Once you have had sex with a woman, she thinks she has rights, or she feels that she has rights. So even though she's given up her rights, she hasn't given up her rights. And she confronts him like a girlfriend, like a wife, that I deserve for you to respect my boundaries, even though she's sleeping on his couch for free, even though he hasn't demanded sex out of her, and even though he's been hospitable to whatever she wants. So later on in the episode, we see towards the end of the episode, we see Issa and Daniel sitting there actually enjoying a show. Daniel comes in, sits on the couch. You can tell he's dressed to go out. And they sit down and they have a laugh about a show. And you can see that Daniel has acceded to her wishes, which is something that is not real. If Daniel's an alpha male and Daniel's the epitome of a street dude, he's not going to let an ex sleeping on his couch that's not having sex with him run his life, which is the thing that I don't like. They make Daniel simp. They write it into his character, and either Daniel is a simp or he's an alpha male. But what they want is Daniel to simp for her. They want Daniel to do something that Lawrence wouldn't. Lawrence would not have stood for it. Lawrence didn't bend to her wishes, but Daniel does. So Daniel is getting ready to go out, and he's getting ready to go spend the night someplace else. And then Daniel tells her the house is yours. So as he packs up and he walks out to go on a date, you can have to see the look on her face that even though she got her wishes, where she doesn't have to hear him pleasing some other woman, she's still not happy, which is a typical female. So let's get to Molly. First time we see Molly, Molly's on the beach in Aruba. I think it's Aruba, but she's on the beach somewhere on an island. And we see that she has a guy, a male friend, that is massaging her feet. I do is her feet, and they're interacting. And Molly's talking about how much fun they've had, and they had this look like they've had a good time for the vacation week that Molly took. Says he's had so much fun he would like to see her again. And he says, I'm going to be in LA in a few days. And Molly with her smart ass says, so you got a visa. Now this dude is speaking perfect American English. And she assumes that he's some poor dude that she happened to meet on a beach. That's how the fantasy in some women's minds go. They can't grasp reality for what it is. He says, no, I'm from Cincinnati. In other words, you just insulted him, calling him a native and a poor dude that can't find a way to get off the island and come visit her. So that just shows you Molly has come full circle back to where she was. She's accepted her role as a loose woman. Later on, we see Issa driving Lyft, pick Molly up, and they have this discussion about her vacation and her job and stuff like that. So we see them eating lunch, and they're talking about the lack of sex that Issa's having, and the tension that she's gone through with Daniel. And then Issa asks her about Dro. Now, Molly has accepted her position with Dro, even though she doesn't like talking about it. So Molly says that things are too loose and there's things that she doesn't like, and she's going to have to set boundaries with her job, with her new job, because we found out she's got a new job, and with the guys in her life. So she says that she's not going to let guys that are, guys in her life run her. She's going to run them. In other words, she's going to be the boss hoe. She's going to boss up on all the men in her life. Like with the guy that she met on the beach. He actually comes to visit, and we have a scene where he's going down on her, and you can see her trying to exert dominance, because as he's trying to change positions and do something else, she pushes his head back down. That's her exerting dominance over him. In other words, this is what I want, and you're here to serve me, which is kind of similar to the Molly we saw at the very beginning in season 1. So the first time we see her and Dro's they're in bed together. They just finished having sex, and it's in the morning, and they're waking up, and they're having a chat, and Dro offers to cook breakfast. And she's fine with it, with Dro cooking breakfast, because they're all lovey-dovey and in that bubble, until Candace, Dro's wife, calls, and he picks up and answers the phone. And that question that everybody's been wondering for the whole season 2 and in the hiatus, what was the real relationship between Dro and Candace? And everybody, I know all the women wanted Dro to be sneaking around behind Candace's back, because Dro actually said we have an open relationship. And 99% of the black women didn't believe that Dro had an open relationship with his wife. He thought that he was this lying dude that just wanted to have 2 women and is sneaking around behind his wife's back. So everybody's all tense when Dro actually picks up the phone and speaks. I think even Molly was kind of wondering what was the deal with Candace. So you know that moment when you're laying in bed and the phone rings, because I've been on both sides of this equation. Phone rings, the significant other picks up the phone, and you're wondering whether you should be quiet or say hello, but you know you don't want to screw up your situation, so you stay quiet. So I'm thinking Molly was assuming that Dro was going to be sneaky, but he picked up the phone and he says, you can tell that Candace asked him, where is he? And he says, I'm still at Molly's. So that answers everybody's question that, yes, Candace knows about Molly. And I think Molly was kind of disappointed that it was just so casual. I think Molly even got kind of angry, because I think she wanted a little bit of that excitement of being the side chick and doing something that she wasn't supposed to be doing, and then finding out that it was just regular. It's a regular relationship, and it's a regular relationship that puts her in second place. And you know, Molly does not like being in second place. So Molly starts setting down rules that sex is fine, but she doesn't want to be friends or friends that have sex. She wants to be associates that have sex. No dating, no phone calling, no texting, none of that stuff, none of that friend stuff. In other words, none of that relationship stuff. She just wants to wall all that stuff off and just have sex with Dro. Of course, Dro, being the alpha male, modifies it, but he's not going to exactly adhere to it. So Dro finds out that Molly has a new job and he wants to check in on her. So he asked her about her package. Did she get what she wanted? And she says yes. He said, well, we need to go celebrate. And Molly has this look like, you know, Negro, I just told you I don't want to go out with you. We're just associates that have sex. And he said associates do have dinner and associates do celebrate. So she caves in. So he invites her out on a date to celebrate. And the next scene where they're together, we see that she's getting ready. She's in the bathroom getting ready, trying on different undergarments, getting ready for Dro to pick her up, getting ready to actually go out and meet Dro. And she walks into her living room or kitchenette, and she finds that Dro is standing there with a glass of wine. And naturally, she asked, you let yourself in? And he said, yeah. He said, I called you. He said, and you weren't picking up. So I decided to come up and see what was up. And you can tell she's visibly not upset, but visibly perturbed. And she talks about boundaries. And she talks about enforcing her boundaries. So she does what any woman would do. She asks for her key back. And naturally, he knows that it's not just about the key. It's about the relationship that they have. So he has a little pushback about not giving up the key. And she forcefully asks for her key back. So, you know, he's pissed off. So he goes in his pocket. He goes on his key ring. Now, the key's on the key ring. On the key ring, and gives her back her key. And they have that look. They have that tense look. And instead of them going out, which Molly really didn't want to go out in the first place, he said, I think I should go. And she says, I think you should too. Now, whether this is them splitting up or they're modifying their relationship, I do not know. But this is her bossing up on her relationships. And the other two guys, I think that she was talking about, actually adhered to it. But it looks like Dro's going to buck. And so now their relationships, Molly and Issa, that was clearly defined by them, that they agreed to, is now complicated. Not by the men, but by them. Now, maybe the men should have held their boundaries. Maybe, I do believe that Dro and Daniel should have been firmer. But like I said, this is a female-oriented show, and it's going to be female-leaning, and a lot of stuff that men would normally do, they can't because it is a female show. And I noticed that, especially Daniel's character, they kind of bend him and not make him quite real. Going forward, I would love to see Daniel become more of a real man, a real male, and not there for Issa to play off her dysfunction on him. Let Daniel show some real emotions instead of just hurt and confusion. Make him stand up to Issa. Lawrence did. Now, everybody talked about how alpha or how beta Lawrence was. Lawrence always stood up to Issa. Always. Now, sometimes he would cave in when he knew he did wrong, or he knew he wasn't at his best. He would rethink what he was doing and kind of come to an agreement. But Lawrence never let Issa push him around, ever. Now, if he cooked dinner, which is more of a feminine trait, or he cleaned, which is more of a feminine trait, at the end of the day, Lawrence found his balls and he stood up and he stood firm. Whereas they don't let Daniel's character do the same thing. And I think going forward, if this is going to be a realistic series and Issa's going to deal with Daniel, I know it's already in can and they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to recut the script for me. Going forward, if they're really going to make this series real, they're going to have to let Daniel grow. They're going to have to let Daniel be who it is. Because right now, Daniel's acting like a confused little boy. And without Daniel being a man, or the alpha male that they project Daniel to be, then Issa's character is going to flop all over the place. Because there is no structure. There is no guiding force. There is no boundary. And if they let Daniel be a man and let Daniel do what men do, I think it'll give more flesh and balance to Issa's relationship. And by the same token, it'll give balance and more flesh to Molly's relationships. Like it or not, without Lawrence, there's no anchor. Like it or not, Daniel was never the ankle. Daniel was the beta orbiter around Issa. So Daniel now has to be not the orbiter, not the satellite, but the planet, but the sun that Issa orbits around. You don't need sexual tension between Issa and Daniel. That sexual tension has already been dismissed because they've had sex already. Now it's get down to the tension of the relationship. How are you going to make it work? Or not make it work? Because what we see now really is basically Issa and Daniel in an open relationship, much like what we see with Molly and Dro, where the sex and the relationships are all over the place. So what we're seeing here is not toxic masculinity. What we're seeing here is toxic femininity, just like we've seen in the first two seasons. Women not willing to accept their roles and not allowing men to perform their roles, which I guess is a microcosm of the Black community. But anyway, that is my review of the first episode of season 3 of Insecure. As the characters get more defined and we get a better direction, we can actually get deeper into what's going on with these characters. But for right now, it's pretty much the same stuff that went on in the first 2 seasons. Pretty much the same thing. In fact, it's even more confused than it was, I would say, even the first season. So hopefully the characters will get more defined in their roles and we can get some more insights to how things should or shouldn't flesh out. But until then, this is BGS out, and I will see you guys on the next one.